Hey, it's Carrie.
And Ashley.
We welcome you to the Self Care Cafe. We are both health professionals and moms and nature lovers and food lovers and love helping women get over dieting and just start living. We think that talking about bodies and perfect bodies and dieting is just boring.
Did we put you to sleep there, Carrie?
Yes. So if you are ready to ditch dieting and get to living and talk about more important things, then you are in the right place. We don't put shame and guilt on the menu here. You don't even have to tip us.
Nope.
Come hang with us. The advice is free. We want to have a bunch of girlfriends to just hang out with and get real with, and it's time to start living, ladies.
Hey, Carrie.
Hey, Ashley.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
What do you want to talk about today?
Well, last week we talked a little bit about diets and dieting, and so I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about kind of the ramifications of dieting a little bit.
Hmm.
I think a lot of us already sort of know it, but it's so normalized that we don't really realize how much it really messes up our bodies.
Hmm. Yeah, and it comes at us from all directions, right? On the TV and on social media and at our doctor's offices and
Our
um
friends and family and
right. Yeah, it's everywhere. And it's so easy to just, okay, fine, I'll give in to it. Um, but we are here to offer you support and tell you that there is a better way. And if you listened to last week's, we got into intuitive eating and what that is. And now we want to get into a little bit more like what is a diet, right?
yeah,
Because like we mentioned that so many programs now, so many diets are they go behind this facade of a lifestyle program or a wellness program, when really they're just diets in disguise.
for sure. And some are more forthcoming than others, definitely. And I think we have an episode planned about that too, like what to look for.
Yes,
But yeah, so what is a diet? That's a big question. But
that is a big question.
yeah, I think of a diet. Well, first of all, let's back up a second. So, as a registered dietitian, I talk about quote unquote, like, what does your diet look like? And I think of the word diet as a completely different, like, definition of how most people think about the word diet. So, my idea of diet is like, what are you including in your day to day nutrition? Like, that's my idea of what is
Which is
your diet?
probably the original
Yeah,
definition of it, right? Which is why you have the word diet in your title,
exactly.
dietitian.
Exactly.
um, Unfortunately, it has been changed to mean what?
Following plans, following rules, following lots of different things. So, like, from a diet standpoint, the point of a diet usually is to have what we like to call intentional weight loss. So, losing weight on purpose for whatever reason you're shooting for. A lot of times it's for the idea that losing weight will be better for our health, or maybe we're having a bad body day or week or year and we want to be able to fit into different clothes, or the list can go on and on. But that's sort of the idea of intentional weight loss. And we talk a lot about that as opposed to weight loss that might just happen naturally for your body. Um, because our body sort of likes to hang out where it likes to hang out as far as weight and size goes. So if we ate intuitively and we moved our bodies in ways that felt good to us, and again, we'll talk more about joyful movement and intuitive movement and fitness in other episodes. But if we're kind of living our best life, not dieting for intentional weight loss, our body tends to find what we like to call our natural weight. And it may or may not be the weight that we have thought about in our brains, or what the BMI scale might say. Again, another episode on that for another day. But it's just kind of like where our body likes to hang out. It's kind of the same idea as set point theory, where our body has this natural range. of where it's comfortable, right? Because really, if we think about our bodies, our caveman brain or our brain stem is really the one in charge. Um, and we don't talk a lot about that. And so
Mhm.
when we start embarking on this intentional weight loss journey, again, for whatever reason you might be doing that for, we tend to turn towards diets. And diets, in this sense, are things that are going to tell you what, when, how much, what types, how to cook different things of different meals or foods, right?
Right, right. I like to think of, the the natural weight is my body's happy place. It's like it's where I feel strong and I feel good in my body. And again, like we've said before, it's not that we don't have those days. I had it was 2 days ago I had one of those days. I'm like, "Oh, I just feel so," but I stop myself. And it's like, "Okay, well, what have I done differently? What have I eaten foods that I know bloat me up, make give me a lot of gas and kind of drain my energy?" So and that's all part of the intuitive eating process.
Right, and even if we
Um,
don't have anything like that, our bodies just change, and our
right,
culture would have us believe that it should never change from when we're 16 to when we're 45, like, that just doesn't make any sense at all, but that's the messaging that we're pushed every
yeah,
day, every minute almost, depending on how much media or, even coworkers or providers like we talked about. It comes from all angles.
right, right. Yeah, I remember saying something um to this was years ago. I think we had eaten a white pizza for the first time, with the white, sauce, the cheesy white sauce, and, she's
Yum.
like, "Oh, no, 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 I couldn't eat that. That's got too much fat in it." I'm like, "Girl, you are missing out." And, like, is one slice gonna really hurt you? So yeah, just those messages that, "Oh, no, 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 I can't eat that. I can't." But then we this is a good segue into that diet cycle with the restriction mindset. So when you restrict
Whether
and you
no matter what it is too, so let's just touch on that for a second, like, we can restrict calories, we can restrict food groups, we can restrict times of eating, I'm looking at you, intermittent fasting, we can restrict macros, we can restrict certain foods or entire food groups or anything, like, anytime you're purposely avoiding something, your body figures that out. And
yeah,
Carrie, what happens when I tell you you can't do something?
I'm pretty sure I'm gonna do it.
Exactly. And our brain thinks the same thing about food. I don't know why we haven't figured this out yet. Like, we all know when we get told we can't do something, we're going to want to do it. But why haven't we clicked that, hey, when we say this about food, this is what happens? And I feel like we've all had that thought, but we just don't know what else to do.
Right. Yeah, well, our little inner child kicks in, right? We become like toddlers. When you tell what happens when you tell a toddler, "Don't touch that," what's the first thing they do? They touch it. Remember the study on with it was it M&Ms and the toddlers, they were
Yes.
told they could eat them, they just couldn't eat a certain color, the red
Red.
ones or
Yep. It was
something,
the red ones.
and, what's the first thing they went for?
The red M&Ms.
Yeah, because it's just like our brains don't like to be restricted and told no. Now, obviously, there are things that, of course, we need for our own safety, and right. But food is something you have to eat to live.
Exactly. We
In
wouldn't be
order
here if we didn't.
Correct. So that is different from, don't touch that hot burner. Um,
Right.
food is something you have to have in order to continue to live on this earth.
Exactly.
So
And
it
that's
is,
why it tastes so good too. Like, if we I like to talk about this, and I'll just make it short today, but we can talk about it more another day. If food didn't taste good to us, we wouldn't be here because we
mm,
wouldn't eat it if it didn't give us that, like, pleasure or that reward. We wouldn't have done it as cavemen. So we wouldn't be here today. And I think that people get nervous about how good food tastes sometimes. It's scary because if it tastes really good, then it probably isn't quote unquote healthy for me. But we need all sorts of nutrition. We need all sorts of energy. We need a lot of calories, and our body is constantly burning calories. Another word for calories is energy. And our body has so many functions it needs to do every single second, every minute, every day. And even if we were just to sleep, or, if for some reason we are in like a coma or a medically induced coma or anything like that, so we're just laying there, literally just laying there for 24 hours, most of us would need at least 1,000 calories, if not more, just to do everything our body needs to do on a second to second, minute to minute basis.
To just lay there
Yeah,
and do nothing,
nothing.
which is crazy because so many diets, what do they cut you down to? 1,200 calories?
Yeah, yeah.
That is nuts because that's only 200 calories more or less than that than you need if you were just sat around, and then we wonder why we're so low in energy and we're cranky and irritable and
Not able to
short-tempered.
focus. Yep. All of
Yeah, like, yeah. Oh my goodness, yeah. It's just like so learning to nourish your body is just so important. Um, so if we but when we fall into that diet cycle, the first thing that we do is start restricting. Right? And we're trying to quiet that little inner rebel child in us, like,
it.
we right,
Yeah.
to get what we want, and when you restrict calories, one of the first things that you lose isn't necessarily fat, it's your muscle, and you start to lose bone, and so those are not great things, to start losing, especially on with rapid weight loss. You really start losing it because your body's looking for something to draw from.
Right, it
And
needs that fuel, right? That's what
right,
food is, it's fuel, and if we're not giving it fuel from food, it has to take it from somewhere, and like Carrie said, a lot of us would believe that the first place our body likes to take it from is body fat, but that's not, because fat is a little bit harder to convert to energy for our body to be able to use, and muscle is so much easier. So usually we our body's preferences on energy is straight from food, carbohydrates, right? That's a big first one it likes. Our body basically runs on carbohydrates, and we'll talk way more about that another time. But then it turns to like protein or muscle. And then finally, like the third and backup source, if we have to do it, our body will use fat. So losing our muscle and losing our bone and losing a lot of other things that happen in the process of intentional weight loss really ends up tanking our metabolic rate, which is basically the rate at which we burn calories. It's a lot more to it than that, but we don't want to get too technical on on you. Um, but really, it slows down. So that means that when our metabolism is slowing down, we then need less energy or calories per day again. That's
right,
why a lot of us hit that like plateau of weight loss, because we're still eating the same amount of calories on our diet or restriction plan or whatever we might be doing, but our body has slowed down enough to be like, oh, that's all we need.
right, right. It's kinda like a wood stove.
Or a thermostat, exactly.
Yeah, so if you, want to burn the fire at a lower heat, you don't feed it as much wood, or you feed it wet wood, not dry nice dry wood. If you want to keep that fire going at a hotter rate, then you feed it more dry wood.
That's a really
Uh,
great example.
yeah. So it's your body works kind of the same way, like your food is fuel for your body, and your muscle and your bones that's is living
Working
material.
tissue. Yep.
Yes, tissue, thank you.
Yep.
Brain cramp there. Um, but so when you start losing it, then your body's like, "Oh, okay, well, we can slow things down because
Right.
we don't have as much we have to feed
Right. And
and
it,
keep
it
going."
doesn't know the difference between, hey, we're doing this on purpose and we're starving to death in caveman days. It has no idea. So it's
Right,
trying to preserve us, right? So our bodies are great at keeping us alive, kind of like what we talked about earlier. And so It's has so many mechanisms in place to be able to keep us alive almost no matter what. And so once it senses that restriction, this is why it does all these things to help preserve life.
Right, so it slows your metabolism down so that you don't lose as much fat, so that when if it gets to that point where it needs to start drying on it, it can, versus if it's burning at a higher rate when it doesn't need to, you would use those resources in your body up a lot faster and consequently die sooner.
Exactly.
So or get sick sooner.
Right.
So your I mean, your body's amazing at figuring out I mean, it again, like Ashley said, it doesn't know why, it just knows what's going on inside of it.
Exactly.
Um, so it responds the same either way.
Mhm. And then some other things that happen, and again, I think most of us have experienced these thoughts and feelings when we're dieting or restricting, but we don't necessarily realize that it's like part of our body's process. And so we definitely wanted to break down like the science and the nutrition and the physiology of it to say, hey, this is normal. If you're experiencing this, this is your body doing this on purpose, and
Mhm.
we can't really avoid it. Again,
Right,
it's trying to preserve our life for us. So other things that happen when we start restricting are our body also increases hunger signals, right? So the signals that tell us we're hungry, those tend to go up. We
right.
also think about food a
Like,
lot.
hello, knocking at your door.
Yeah.
Hello, like, we're not getting enough energy here, give
Please
me
go
some more.
find us some food.
Right.
Yep. And so that's where those cravings come in. So if we're on a diet and we can't have something, maybe we're craving that particular food, or maybe we're craving something else. And that's exactly where those cravings come from. It's your body's way of being like, hey, we need some energy. And a lot of times the cravings are high fat, maybe, or high sugar or high calorie, because those are the fuels that our body needs and wants in that moment. Because fat has a lot of energy. Carbohydrates and high sugar foods have a lot of quick energy to get our blood sugar back up and kind of get things moving again, like lighter fluid on that fire Carrie was talking about. That's what carbohydrates and sugar does. It gives us that quick burning fuel, and that's what our body's thinking it needs, right? If we're restricting and oh my gosh, we're starving and oh my gosh, we might die, let's get some quick energy to get the ball rolling again.
Right. Yeah, and it does the same whether, if you're restricting low on energy or if you're exhausted, so you're not sleeping well, not getting enough quality sleep, and you find yourself craving those simple sugars and snacky type foods, it's because your brain is just tired. It's like, I need some energy, and what is the only fuel your brain uses? Is glucose, which you get from carbohydrates. So, and so often that falls into I don't have the willpower to do it. I just no, there's actually a physiological reason why you are craving these foods. And
Yeah, you're trying to fight your survival brain.
yes, yeah,
Never
yeah.
gonna happen.
Tug of war going inside your
Right.
body.
For sure. And then the cravings get so high and so strong that, of course, we're going to give in to them at some point, right? Like, we can't fight that. Like Carrie just said, our body's going to take over and we're going to be shoving stuff in our mouth and we might not even realize we're doing it because our body's just so strongly saying, we need fuel, feed us, or we're going to die.
Yep.
Um, And so we tend to pick again those high calorie, high sugar options sometimes, or high fat maybe, or kind of whatever's laying around. And that's definitely where we can get into like our eyes were bigger than our stomachs and eat way more than we intended to. And when that happens, usually if we're doing it over a period of a few days or weeks or whatever, that may be like eating in secret because I'm supposed to be on my diet,
Mm,
or like little binge eating episodes or anything like that, we tend to gain fat really fast from that because our body is like, oh, finally, we got some fuel. And I
yeah,
don't know if we're going to be starving again tomorrow. So we better hold on to all of that.
right. And I'll add, when that happens, you're also end up being enveloped in shame and guilt,
Yes.
uh, and just so it's not just a physical thing, now it comes to your core, right? To your
Exactly.
self-worth. It's like, I'm a failure. I failed again. I'm so stupid. Why don't I have any willpower? What's wrong with me? And so all that stuff starts coming up back up to the surface because when you were restricting and like, yep, I got this, I can do this, you felt strong in some level, and like you were successful and succeeding, and then all of a sudden all that comes crashing down. And so, and it just brings all your limiting beliefs and all the yuck that you maybe pushed down with the diet comes right back up to the surface. And that's, the crappy part about it too, is that it's not just regaining that weight, it's all those feelings about yourself that come with it.
Right. And again, if we're gaining fat, which might not necessarily equate to gaining weight, everybody's bodies work a little bit differently. But when we're doing the fat kind of, I don't know, what's the word? Like, I want to hold on to all this fat that our body's doing. We are also lowering our metabolism again and even more, right? Because Carrie mentioned bone and muscle are more like living tissue. So they're using energy, whereas fat, it just kind of hangs out in our body and takes up room. It's very important. Obviously, we wouldn't have it if it wasn't, because again, our body is thinking, oh, we might need this soon as our
Right.
backup fuel. So let's gain as much as we can. But
Right. And
again,
like Ashley, go ahead.
no, it's okay.
Well, like Ashley was saying too, like it may or may not show up on the scale because what happens is when you lose bone and muscle, so as far as volume wise, I always compare like fat, think of like soap suds, and muscle and bone, think of like a bar of soap. So if you take the same weight, that weight wise, it's going to take a lot more suds to equal the same amount of muscle and bone. But when you're losing that muscle and bone, you're losing weight on the scale, right? And then if you're gaining fat, because fat is in of a little lighter, like it's not lighter volume wise.
Right.
Like a pound of fat is the same as a pound of muscle. They're both a pound, but volume
It
wise,
takes
it's
up more
different.
space, basically.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Ashley's my dictionary.
Sometimes we flip flop, we go back and forth.
So then what happens, Ashley? Like after you like, oh my gosh, I blew it. I feel so, I suck.
Yeah, well, so a couple different things. A lot of times we either continue with the like quote unquote overeating or binge eating, or like I blew it, so I might as well just like eat through my
I'm
entire
on this
weekend.
train. I'm gonna keep on it.
Exactly. Um, and that might be the same day, it might be the next couple days, like everybody's story is different, but at some point we either keep going with that or we do that and or maybe we switch right to this. We restrict maybe more. We'll say, "Oh, tomorrow will be better," or "Monday will be better," or whatever, and then we just try harder the next day. Maybe we restrict our calories more or we try to eat less the next day to quote unquote make up for
You
the day
basically
before.
punish yourself.
Exactly, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so is this a sustainable way to do food? No,
No.
of course it's
No, and honestly, what a horrible, sucky way to live. I mean, let's
yeah.
face it. Like, but so many of us do it, right? We do this, and it's just this constant cycle of success, fail,
Right.
right? And around something that we all have to do to live and
Mhm.
to be healthy. And it's awful that so many of us fall into this cycle. But again, as we always say, we are not knocking you if you are currently dieting or you're thinking about going on your next diet. Like we've all been there, and we're not knocking you at all. We're just offering a different way.
Right, and
Um,
in a way to think about it in a more factual sense too, because again, we all have the lived experience of doing this, but
yes.
there's a reason for it, and sometimes understanding why our body does what it does and realizing it's not your fault, right? Because, oh, this is such a great point. We think we failed the diet, right? Because we couldn't do it. We didn't have the willpower. We didn't get the results that whatever promised us,
Right.
it's our fault.
Not wrong. Yep. We
Yep,
did something wrong.
exactly, and that wrecks us, like, it totally erodes our self-trust, our body trust, our self-worth, all of it, confidence, and
Yep.
what do most of us do? Maybe we go, quote, unquote, "off plan" for a while and do whatever, but most of us come back. Like, I can't remember the exact statistic, but most people are doing a couple different diets a year for their whole lives. That's a
Mm,
lot of times to do it. And, one other quick thing to mention before we get into the next piece is if we had a microwave that we bought from like a department store or something and that didn't work, what would we do with it? We'd bring it back and get our money back. It's
right.
not our fault the microwave didn't work, but because the diet didn't work, it didn't give us the results that we thought we were supposed to have. We internalized that blame, shame, guilt, and it's our fault,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and think about the advertising, the commercials, they make it look so sexy and appealing and easy. Like, "This is easy. All you have to do is follow our plan. Your food will show up at your door," or, "Here's all your tips on, the food to get and how much of it to eat," and they make it look like it's so easy.
Just work hard at it and you'll lose weight. And first of all, that's not even true for a lot of us.
No.
Like,
No.
and the calories in, calories out thing, like that, our bodies are not machines. They
Correct.
are, but they're not like that. They're not like these.
Not a black and white,
Right.
kind of, feed
Right.
it this, you get this out the other end.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was something else I was just gonna say and I forgot.
Right.
It'll come.
I'll
Um,
I'll keep going with what I was gonna say,
yes,
if
you keep
that's
saying.
okay.
Sorry, I interrupt.
No, that's okay. We interrupt each other, but they're all great points. I was just gonna say that, over time and as we get older and we're doing different diets, a lot of people find um that they have to lower the calories if that's the type of restriction they're doing more each
Right.
time to get the same weight loss results or whatever. Not to mention that every time you do this cycle, this weight loss, weight gain, or what you might call yo-yo dieting, I call it weight cycling. So if you ever hear me say weight cycling, I'm talking about yo-yo dieting. We're tanking our metabolism, remember, twice in one cycle. And so the more times you do it, your metabolism is so much lower. So it makes sense that more you diet off and on, the lower your metabolism is, which means the less calories you need. And there's actually been a lot of research done on the biggest loser contestants, right? So
Mm,
they lose a lot of weight really fast. And what they found was their base metabolism, like calorie needs. I can't remember the exact numbers, but when they started the show, it was X, let's just say. And after the show and 6 months later, it was much lower than that,
yeah,
which
yeah.
means that they don't need as much food to do the things their bodies need to do, which is something to think about.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean they're gonna have more energy,
Right,
because
exactly.
yeah. And, essentially, the way I see dieting is basically if you dieting trains your body to
Ne-
not
Need
need
less food, not eat.
right,
Yeah.
right, you're basically training your body to need less, which on the surface might sound okay, but if you then go back to eating a quote unquote "normal" amount of calories, what happens is it'll just store the extra. So you're training it to need less, so then when you want to eat what your hunger is telling you that you need, then it stores
Mm-hmm.
the extra.
Exactly.
Um, an example, I when I was first out of college, the only job I could find was at a hospital. Um, this was like, I don't even wanna say how many years ago, 35 years ago. Anyway, blah, 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 was at a local hospital, excuse me, and it was called HMR program. It was a medically supervised liquid diet. And I
I
was
don't like
just
it
like,
already.
I know, right? Well, I didn't either. I was waiting for the cardiac rehab position to open, which it did 3 months later, thankfully. But I was sort of I was just more the clerical person for it. And but one day, one of the participants came in. She had reached her goal weight, and she came in with a friend who didn't diet. She just was. She had habits that she was just she exercised regularly. She from what I could tell, basically practiced intuitive eating, probably not knowing that at the time. But just ate what she felt her body needed. And just had those kinds of health habits. And they came in and they wanted me to measure their body fat. Um, and so I did. And the woman who had not dieted was just in a healthy, normal range for her, for being, a woman at her age and stuff. And then the participant, according to the charts on the body fat charts, on the body fat percentage, she was quote unquote still in the obese category. And the reason why is because she lost, and especially with a liquid diet, it is the weight loss is so quick. She lost so much
And
muscle.
unhealthy for everyone listening. That's not a great way to do it.
No, not at all. Because then she probably, when she started eating normal again, probably gained the weight back. I don't know. I left the program. So, um, but that is our point, is that you lose all that. So she lost, because your body fat percentage is a ratio of your fat tissue to your lean tissue, and the lean tissue includes bone and muscle. So it's that ratio. So if you are losing more muscle and bone, then all right, there's a term in our industry called skinny fat. I don't always like to bring these things up because, but the point, I think it makes a point, is that you can lose weight on the scale, but what's actually happened in your body is probably not what you actually wanted to happen.
Right. Exactly.
So, she was obviously super discouraged. Like, why did I just go through this program for that? Um, so that was just to make the point of how we can lose so much of what we want to keep, and not necessarily lose what we say we want to lose, right?
Yeah,
So,
if we even lose weight at all, right? Like,
right.
there's no guarantee, and calories in and calories out is kind of where we started with it, but it comes back to it because that's not how our bodies work at
No,
all. And
no.
even if you're restricting a lot, I'm not going to say low numbers because I don't want anyone to do it, but if you're restricting a lot, you might not even lose weight. And like
Mhm,
Carrie said, if you do, these are the things that are happening in your body. And so none of it is healthy, right? Our body is basically running on fumes and not very well. And we're probably going to feel awful. And
mhm,
that's no way to be, let alone striving for, health or your ideal health, whatever that might look like for you and your body. It's just
mhm,
not sustainable. So, there's this statistic that we talk about a lot where 95% of diets fail, or if 95% of people that dieted, they don't have the weight loss over what, 5 years, right, Carrie? 3 to 5 years.
yeah,
So that's where research really is crummy about weight loss because a lot of research studies like to do the study for a short period of time. A year maybe is probably one of the longest ones I've seen, but like a month to 6 weeks, maybe a few
yeah. Their
months
their their definition of long-term weight loss is very different from reality
from
and what real people consider long-term weight loss. Like,
exactly.
long-term, it might be 6 months
Yeah,
for this,
right.
and I think it's important too that over time, like you had mentioned, Ashley, the idea of your ideal health, um, is that sometimes we have to change that vision of what that is too.
Right.
and take it away more from what our bodies look like to more what can our body do?
Yep.
Does our body support the lifestyle I want to live? And if it doesn't, what do I need to do to support my body
Right.
so that
Right.
it in turn can support my lifestyle?
And that
Uh,
includes things like taking medications or making adjustments for yourself. And like I said it your ideal health because
mhm,
the picture perfect idea of health might not be achievable for everybody because of genetics, because of so many other things. And again, we'll talk more about this another time, but it's all about, like Carrie was saying, like, what can we do to support ourselves the best that we can without costing ourselves things also. So we might think we need to, go on a really low calorie meal plan to lose weight to be XYZ goal, but in reality that's costing us a lot of different things. Like we talked about our mental health, our relationship with food, our relationship with our body. Um, we're probably tanking our metabolism. All those things are a cost to pursuing intentional weight loss.
right,
And
right.
the whole point of the episode is to talk about, in reality, with that 95% statistic, in 3 to 5 years, people have gained their weight back and more.
And that's
Yeah,
um,
2/3 of people that have had weight loss success in the beginning end up gaining more weight back than they lost. So that means that dieting is a predictor of weight gain.
that kind of blows my well, the first time I heard that, I'm like, "What?" And then right? So think about that. So dieting, if you go on a diet, you are basically predicting that you're going to gain the weight back.
And
And
more usually.
and more. And that's where that yo-yo dieting idea comes
Yeah.
from, that you lose the weight because diets is if you're trying to lose weight, regardless of where that weight's coming from, most or many diets, they do work, right? Like you lose the weight, but the question then is, how do you sustain that? And the question, like through the years, the number of women that like, just help me lose these last 10
Right.
pounds. And my response to them is always, is it going to be worth what you have to do to lose those last 10 pounds? Is it going to really be worth it to you?
Exactly.
Or what? Because maybe your body's saying, nope, I'm good right here. This is where I'm happy. Um, and of course, we also, which we haven't mentioned yet, is get off the scale.
Right. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But and then at what point is it like, "Oh, let's lose these last 10 pounds," and then when we do it, "Oh, what about the next 10 pounds?" Right? Like we have
Well,
always wanting kind of situation.
yes, and that's kind of, when I fell into anorexia is sort of partly what happened. There's a lot more to it, of course, but part of it was the summer between my junior and senior year in high school, had started training for field hockey, and I just, with all the running and stuff, just dropped 5 pounds, and people started saying, "Oh, you look really good," Um, and so in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, well, if I look good dropping 5 pounds, maybe I'll look better if I drop another 5,"
Right.
until it eventually became goals to, "Oh, I wanna get to double digits. Oh,
Yeah.
like, so that is also another reason why we caution against, commenting on people's weight.
Mhm.
If they've lost weight, for one thing, you don't know the reason behind why they're losing, whether it's maybe they do have an eating disorder, maybe they're going through cancer treatments, maybe they've been sick in some other way, or it also just might maybe they're not in the throes of an eating disorder right now, but encouraging that,
Yep.
you might be encouraging them to continue to lose weight, and then they find themselves they are going too far. Um, so, you know, "Hey, you look really happy today. You have such a lovely smile." Something like that is different from, "Wow, you look great. You lost some weight."
Right.
It also implies that they didn't look so good before,
Right. And
right?
if that's all we talk about, and again, we'll talk a lot about this another time too, but if that's all we talk about with people is their appearance, it's only reinforcing this whole idea of diet culture that our appearance is the most valuable and interesting thing about us.
Right.
And how awful is that?
How boring. I'm gonna use that word boring. It's not
Boring.
boring.
It's
Like,
boring.
there's so many other great things that we could talk about than that,
Mhm.
and, so we will challenge you. One, start noticing how often you compliment people's appearance,
Yep.
right?
It's hard.
It's
I've
very
I've been practicing not doing it for a long time, and it's really the first thing that pops up into my brain every single time, and I'm like, "Nope, that's not what I'm going to say." And then I was like, "Okay, well, maybe I can comment on, like, their outfit or their hair or something," and I'm like, "Still, that's the same thing almost." And so it's really hard to come out of any of that, especially if you don't know people very well. But a simple, like, "It's really great to see you," or "meet you," or whatever is
Mhm,
just so much better than anything about their appearance.
yeah. I mean, I don't mind, complimenting someone's outfit. It's a cute outfit.
Yep,
You
yep,
know? Or you look glowing, you're glowing today. You know, what's going on in your life?
right.
To something like that. But yeah, being careful about complimenting people's bodies, and what they look like is a good challenge to start noticing when how often you're doing that.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Anything else we wanna add? I think the bottom line, like we said, is that dieting is a predictor of weight gain because of all the things that happen in your body when we start restricting from a physiological standpoint. It's not your fault, definitely not.
Yeah.
It's really hard to avoid. Again, we'll talk about how I hate to throw providers under the bus in healthcare, but they definitely, keep the fire burning with this. It's not their fault either. We all kind of swim in the diet culture world and
Mhm.
think that losing weight is healthier, but again, it probably isn't because of all the things that happen when you are pursuing that intentional weight loss and what happens, like, mentally, physically, emotionally, all of it.
Right. Yeah, it's not just a physical thing.
Right.
And we would challenge you to sort of be a trailblazer in your circle. If you're surrounded, we sort of tend to go with people, right? So a lot of people in our circle are kind of doing the same thing. Oh, what diet are you doing now? You really need to
Social
try that.
thing, for sure.
Yeah. So being a trailblazer and uh leading the way because maybe they need a leader, right? To help them, and maybe you can be the first one.
Yep, and send them to our podcast or other resources. It's it's sometimes hard because I feel like there's a very small group of people talking about these things and the rest of the world is talking about other things. And it blows my mind every time because there's so much research showing us that this is what happens and yet we still pursue the thoughts about weight loss or the
Mhm.
intentional weight loss.
Right. Yeah. It's tricky because it's not like a black and white, like, hey, this is definitely, there's some blurring where people, they think they're not, like, you've mentioned, Ashley, that they think they're not dieting.
Mhm.
They're still carrying that mentality, and
Yep.
they're still engaging in certain diet culture things.
Yeah, thoughts, beliefs,
Thought.
feelings, all
Yes,
of it.
thank you. My dictionary.
That's
Oh, awesome. Well, we have a lot more we could say on this topic that
That's
we
right,
won't.
but we'll let you process it.
Yeah. So let us know your thoughts. Shoot us a message. Let us know what else you'd like to talk about. If you have any questions, we would love to answer those. We want to make sure that this is understandable. Sometimes because we've been in it so long, we want to know where you're coming from with it, and what you have more questions about, what you need explained a little bit differently. So let us know.
Yeah, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Love you, latte.
See you next time.